Oh, what the heck? Ugh. Okay, so to reiterate, hold on, let me just make chat smaller. But welcome, welcome, happy Friday. I'll put you guys up there. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Is that better? Holy, holy moly. Is that better? I'm sorry. I had the mic on super loud. I'm so sorry. Okay, I double checked the settings. Is it better now? I'm sorry. I was saying that as I posted on Twitter. No. Yeah, as I said on Twitter, yesterday was really frustrating. I was planning to have a good time with Seeks, and then it's just one thing after another, and I got really frustrated afterwards with the freaking. I need you to hear your loud voice since I'm going deaf. I think this is fine. I think this is fine. This is fine, right? But yeah, with my freaking Joy-Con drifting and then the game bugging and then me losing internet, I was really frustrated. Like I was ready to throw my my Joy-Cons at the wall. But I will go buy new ones over the weekend until I can fix these ones or get like a warranty on it. And then hopefully me and Six can play again when it's not raining outside. And yeah, and I just got back from the dentist. So my mouth is still really numb. So I'm trying not to bite my cheek or my tongue. Yeah, I think I'll buy a new one so I can get the colors that I want. But yeah, the bottom right side of my mouth is like numb. It's still numb. I had to get my filling fixed. They had to drill out the old one because they had a crack in it, and then they had to put in new ones. And it took longer than I thought because it's a really big filling apparently. Yeah, so it took longer than I thought, and then that's why I'm like 15 minutes late. And then I have the background music on, but it's like very low just to give it some ambience. And today, oh, here's excuses. No, bro, I was really frustrated. I was really frustrated because I could not control my chef at all. And they did dentist note to believe you. I don't have a dentist note. But I told you guys like 2 weeks ago that I went to get a dental cleaning, and then they said that I needed a filling refilled, and that is today. And it's gloomy outside. I'm hoping it'll rain after our stream so we don't get laggy. But I'll try to read without biting my cheek or my tongue. And I didn't eat lunch yet because I was at the dentist too, so I got like some bread here to snack on. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. It was during the collab with Seeks and some of the other buddies. So you just weren't paying attention, bro. Bro. But yeah, after stream, yeah, I said that I was really frustrated. So it was nice to just have like a talk with Seeks, and she helped calm me down. So I'm really grateful for that. And we just caught up on stuff. It's been a while since we spoke to one another, so it was really nice just to catch up on things too. All right, today we're gonna continue reading. Expect to remember that? Yes, I expect you to remember every single detail and every single news that I put out. Okay, okay, okay. Come on now. Should be keeping a notebook or something. But yeah, we're going to be reading chapter 13 to 16 today. Let's see, where we left off at Etsubo going on a trip with her brother somewhere. Something about her getting an arranged marriage too. So we'll see where we go to. We get to today. Who uses notebook? I'm no boomer. I use notebook. I don't trust technology that much. I'm still very old school. I use a journal and a planner and everything. I don't trust technology with my important stuff. You kidding me? I still read physical books too. I don't read like on a Kindle or whatever. Well, I'm gonna eat a bite of my bread first before I eat because I didn't have lunch yet. Oh no, it's crumbling. Yeah, I use a pen. I don't like pencil because they smudge. I gotta like hold my cheek open so I don't bite my cheek. Yeah, you can have a piece. I bought like those it's called a pineapple bread. It's pretty big. And inside it has like pineapple filling or yeah, it's kind of like a melon bread. And it's really big like and then I cut it into like 8 pieces. So you can have a piece. Yeah, it's called pineapple bread. It's like pineapple mixed with like custard. It's really good. It's really good. But like my mouth is so numb, so when I chew, I have to like um separate my lip and cheek from my teeth, so I don't bite it, I don't chew into it. So sorry if it's like ASMR. Oh. Daniel said pineapple pizza is good. I said it before. I won't ask for pineapple pizza, but if it's there, I'll eat it. No, it's not ASMR. You don't want to hear my chewing? I have to keep my lip open or the right side of my mouth open. And now I have to like tilt my head back so I don't drool out. Oh my goodness. You love it. I hate it when my mouth is numb like this. I can't chew properly. But I need to eat. I haven't eaten since 8 o'clock. But what did you think of my island yesterday? Wasn't it cute? Oh, what the heck? Oh, heck no. Some of my old filling was still in my mouth. The heck? Did you hear that crunch? That was my old filling that they left in my mouth. Disgusting. Oh, I couldn't say the island, too much buffering. Even before I lost connection, it was buffering. Okay, So before we start reading, I'm just gonna eat a little bit more bread, and I'll tell you about. I don't remember much. Oh, it's such a waste. I want to tell you about what happened at the dentist. Like, the dental hygienist that was helping the dentist, she's new, so she's like shadowing, and they were letting her like try some stuff to like get experience, you know. And you know that little suction thingy like that they use to make sure that none of the debris is like going into your throat. She was pointing that thing like at my throat, and I'm like, ma'am, you're choking me. They use you as a guinea pig. Thankfully, it was just the hygienist that was new. The like the doctor dentist is like the usual one, so he's been there for a while. But she was pointing that thing at my throat, and I'm like, bro. And then what was it? Uh, the water squirting one, like she hit that against my lip too, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna die, ain't I? But at least the doctor was there to help guide or to help guide her, and then the other experienced hygienist was there too to like tell her what she was doing wrong. And I'm like, oh my goodness. The dentist didn't learn anything. The hygienist, the dental hygienist, like I get it, you're new, but come on, you're like shoving that thing down my throat. I might eat another piece. I'm so hungry. I'm a qualified dentist. You're a doctor and now you're a dentist, and you're also like what? Sous chef. You're a sous chef now too. Well, where were you yesterday when my internet was out? You should have came and helped me out with that. Oh, I just bit my cheek. Freaking A. Well, I assume since you're so knowledgeable in everything, you know how to fix the internet. Oh, my cheek. Oh, it's gonna hurt when I get some filling back in my cheek. So messy. That's sweet, but I know you're making fun of me. Heck no! I'm sure you know a lot of things. Because my roommate wasn't home, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And they were like, just go unplug the router and plug it back in. And I'm like, I did that! I did that! If there's a pipe that needs cleaning, then I'll be there. I'll keep that in mind. Alright. Let's get to reading. I'm not cleaning your pipes though. What? But you just said that if I need pipes that need cleaning, then I'll be there. You're not gonna help me out? I'll charge you an arm and a leg. How about 2 biscuits? I'll give you 2 biscuits. I'll give you 2 biscuits. So, alright, let's get to reading. Those pipes are out of date. I mean, it's a pretty old house. Old like me. Chapter 13. Foreigners. I'm gonna try to not bite my cheek while I'm reading. I church boomers a lot more. But why? Why? I don't have a lot of money. Why would you do that to me? I'm old, but I don't have a lot of money, okay? I don't have that generational wealth that privileged people have. Proceed to bite your cheek. No, I don't want it to hurt or bleed. Ugh. So annoying. Like, why are these, what do you call these? Are these anesthesia? Why do these things, like, I guess it's good that they're in effect for a long time. But it's so annoying right now. Like, if I try to talk, I, like, bite my cheek or my lip. So I have to, like, do, like, a little lower lip pout to make sure it's not too close to my teeth. Remove your dentures and you'll be good. Sorry, bro. Sorry to break it to you, but this old lady still have all her teeth. Alright, foreigners. Just move my mic a little bit here. Foreigners. My Tokyo relatives had arranged for me to live with them and attend a celebrated schools for girls, where English was taught by a man who had studied in England. This I did for several months, but my brother was not satisfied. The girls were required to give much attention to etiquette and womanly accomplishments, and since my uncle lived in a stately mansion, a great part of my time at home was occupied with trifling formalities. Brother said that I was receiving the same useless training that had been given to him, and since I was to live in America, I must have a more practical education. Once more, my poor brother was totally misunderstood by our kindred on account of his stubborn opposition to all advice. But finally, father's old friend, Major Sato, suggested a mission school that his wife had attended and which bore the reputation of being the best girls' school for English in Japan. This pleased brother, and since it was the rule of the school that each pupil should have a resident guardian, Major Sato accepted the responsibility, and it was arranged that, until the beginning of the next term, some weeks away, I should be a member of the Sato household. Major Sato's wife was a quiet, gentle lady, unassuming in manner, but with a hidden strength of character most unusual. Having no daughter, she accepted me as her own, and in numberless kind ways taught me things of lasting value. It was a 5-mile walk to school from the Sato house. Oh my goodness, 5 miles. That's like 1, 2. It's like 2.5 hours. For me, at least. It takes me like half an hour to walk a mile. In very bad weather, I was sent in Mr. Sato's jinrikisha. But, true to my dear priest teacher's training, I felt that it was almost a disgrace to consider bodily comfort when on the road to learning, so I usually walked. Starting immediately after an elderly breakfast, or elderly, after an early breakfast, I went down the hill and along an old temple road until I reached the broad street passing the palace of His Imperial Majesty. Majesty. Oh my goodness, my mouth. I always walked slowly there, the clear water of the moat reflecting every stone of the sloping wall and the crooked pine trees above formed a picture of calm, unhurried peace. It was the only place I had seen in Tokyo that gave me the familiar feeling of ceremonious dignity. I loved it. From there I came out upon the wide, sunshiny parade ground. There was a solitary tree standing just in the center, where I always rested a few minutes, for beyond was a long climb through a series of narrow, crooked, uphill streets crowded with children, almost every one having a baby on its back. These city children did not have the carefree manner of the street children of Nagaoka. They were older and graver, and although all were busy, some playing games, some chattering in groups, and some jogging along on errands, there was little noise except the kata kata of their wooden clogs. At the top of the hill was my school. It stood behind a long mound wall topped with a thorn hedge. A big gateway opened into spacious grounds, where, in the midst of several trees, stood a long two-storied wooden house with a tiled roof and glass window, divided into large squares by strips of wood. In that building, I spent 4 happy years and learned some of the most useful lessons of my life. I liked my school from the first, but some of my experiences were very puzzling. Had it not been for the constant sympathy and wise advice of kind Mr. Sato, my life might have been difficult, for I was only a simple country girl alone in a new world, looking at me with very eager but very ignorant eyes and stubbornly judging everything by my own unreasonably high standards of conservation opinion. All our studies, except English and Bible, were taught by Japanese men, not priests, but professors. Since they came only for their classes, we saw little of them. The foreign teachers were all women. I had seen one foreign man in Nagaoka, but until I came to this school, I had never seen a foreign woman. These teachers were all young, lively, most interesting and beautiful. Their strange dress, the tight black shoes, the fair skin untouched by the cosmetics which we considered a necessary part of dressing, and the various colors of hair arranged in loose coils and rolls were suggestive of dim visions I had had about fairyland. I admired them greatly, but their lack of ceremony surprised me. The girls, most of them were from Tokyo, where living was less formal than in my old-fashioned home, made very short bows and had most astonishing manners in talking with one another. Nevertheless, I had a certain interest in watching them. The free actions of the teachers with the pupils and the careless conduct of the girls in the presence of the teachers shocked me. I had been taught such precepts as step not on even the shadow of thy teacher, but walk reverently 3 steps behind. And every day I saw familiar greetings and heard informal conversations that seemed to me most undignified on the part of the teacher and lacking in respect on the part of the pupil. And there was another thing which troubled me greatly. Friendly smiles and small attentions from teachers seemed to be liked by these city girls, but I shrank indescribably from personal advances made to myself. My rigid training held me back from being even mildly responsive to either teachers or schoolmates, and it was a long time before the strangeness wore away, and I found myself joining with the girls in their games and beginning to feel acquainted with my teachers. This was helped along greatly by certain democratic rules in the school, which, though not enforced, were encouraged and became the fashion. One of these was giving up the use of the honorific sama and substituting the less formal prefix o, thus replacing the girls on a plane of social equality. Another, which greatly interested me, was the universal agreement to give up arranging the hair in Japanese style. All wore it alike, pulled back from the face and hanging in a long braid behind. This change was a mixed pleasure. I was no longer a martyr to the gluing up process of scented oil and hot tea. But as I was the only curly haired girl in the school, I could accept a certain amount of good natured ridicule. These things I accepted with ease, but my shoes were a real annoyance. All my life, I had been accustomed to leave my shoes at the door whenever I stepped inside a house. But here in the school, we wore our sandals all the time, except in the straw-matted dormitory. I was slow to adapt myself to this, and it was months before I conquered the impulse to slip back my toes from the cord when I reached the door of the classroom. The girls used to wait outside just to laugh at my moment's hesitation. You know, I had that too. Like, I grew up taking off my shoes before I go inside my house. But when I went to my friend's house, like after school, they wore their shoes into the house. And I'm like, that's dirty. And I would always take off my shoes even when going to their house. And they were like, oh, it's fine. Keep your shoes on. I'm like, no. Is this part of the story? No, I'm telling my experience related to the story. Okay, we're gonna continue now. Why are you going up first? I'm always giving tangents, you know. I'd like to input tangents here. You lost me. No. Sorry. I'll announce next time if I want to like voice opinions and insert my own stories. Alright, we're going back into the story. These changes in my lifelong habits, combined with the merry ridicule of the girls, made me feel like I was one of them, and that Etsubo had slipped entirely out of the old life and now was fitted happily into the new. Nevertheless, there were times when, aroused from deep study by someone suddenly calling, "Oh, Etsu-san!" and after a dazed moment of adjusting myself to the new name, I would hurry down the hall, my sandals sounding a noisy clop on the floor, and my head feeling light with the cool looseness of unbound hair. I would be vaguely conscious, somewhere within me, of an odd fear that Etsubo was nowhere. However, this feeling could never last long, for there was a dreaded something which constantly reminded me that I was still a daughter of Echiko. My pronunciation of certain sounds, which was different from that of Tokyo, caused considerable amusement among the girls. Also, I suppose I used rather stately and stilted language, which, combined with odd Echiko accent, must have sounded very funny to city-bred ears. The girls were so good-natured in their mimicry that I could not feel resentment, but it was a real trial to me, for it touched my deep loyalty to my own province. Since I did not quite understand where the difficulty lay, I was helpless, and gradually got into the habit of confining my conversation to few remarks and making my sentences as short as possible. Mr. Sato noticed that I was growing more and more silent, and by tactful questioning, she discovered the trouble. Then she quietly prepared a little notebook with a diagram of the troublesome sounds, and in the kindest way in the world, explained them to me. Brother was there that evening, and he laughed. "Etsubo," he said, looking at me rather critically, "there is not such good reason to be shamed by the accent of an honorable province as over your countrified dress. I must get you some different clothes." I had already grown suspicious of the glances which my schoolmates had been casting at the sash that Toshi had so painstakingly made me of a piece of newly imported cloth called arapaka. So I was glad to accept the garments which brother brought the next day. They were surprisingly gay, and the sash, with one of the black satin, reminded me of the restaurant waiters of Nagaoka. But the girls all said they had a Tokyo air, so I wore them with a pride and satisfaction greater than I had ever felt about clothes, except once. That was many years before, when my father, on one of his visits to the capital, had seen in a store foreign clothes for a child and had brought them home for me. They were of dark blue cloth and a very peculiar in shape. None of us knew they were clothes for a little boy. Ishi dressed me, and I strutted about, crammed into a straight jacket of cold, tight, scratchy discomfort. But the family admired me. The servants watched me with the indrawn breaths of awe, and I was so proud as the bird of many eyes, which is our symbol of vanity. The more I saw of my teachers, the more I admired them. I had lost my feeling of repulsion at their lack of ceremony when I learned to understand the hidden dignity that lay beneath their individual differences. And finally, it began to dawn upon me that the honorable position of instructor was not inconsistent with being merry and gay. My Japanese teachers had been pleasantly courteous, but always lofty and distant in manner. While these smiling, swift-moving creatures ran with us in the gymnasium, played paddle-door and shuttlecock with us, and took turns in eating with us in our own dining room where Japanese food was served on trays as it was on our small tables at home. Often on Friday evenings, we were allowed to arrange a Japanese program of entertainment. We would bring out our bright undergarments, which are the gayest part of Japanese dress, and hang them across the room, where they swayed in a long curve suggesting a broad striped and crest curtains stretched by ancient warriors in camp. Then we would borrow things of each other to make costumes for table locks or character sketches of celebrated people. Sometimes a daring girl would select a teacher, but always a favorite, and pleasantly caricature her. Occasionally, we gave a pantomime of an old historic drama, but we never acted with words. That would have been too bold and unladylike. Even in theaters, women's parts were taken by men, for our stage was not yet far removed from the time when actors were called beggars on the shore. The teachers were always present on these occasions, laughing, applauding, and praising our efforts as freely and happily as if they were girls of our own age. And at the same time, they were all busy knitting and sewing. Or most interesting of all things in the wonderful school, darning stockings. But in spite of my steadily increasing contentment, there was one thing that was a constant ache to me. Neither at school nor near the Sato home was there a shrine. Of course, there were prayers at morning service in the school chapel, and they were very beautiful and solemn. I always felt as if I were in a temple. But they lacked the warm homeliness of our family gatherings in Honorable Grandmother's quiet room, with the lighted candles and curling incense of the open shrine, and the consciousness of nearby protecting presence of the ancestors. This I missed more than anything else. And an added grief was that I could have no part in the service held on the 29th of each month in memory of my father's death day. Before I left home, Mother gave me a very sacred thing. It was my father's death name written on a certain kind of paper by my revered priest teacher. Preciously, I had carried this with me wherever I went, but after I became a boarder in the school, I had a vague feeling that for me to keep it there permanently would be disloyal to the sacred name, and also discourteous to the school, for it would be intruding something of the old into an atmosphere which belonged only to the new. I felt I could not keep it, and yet I could not part with it. I was sorely puzzled. One weekend, I went to visit Mrs. Sato. It was the 29th day of the month. We were sewing, and our cushions were drawn close to the open doors overlooking the garden. I had dropped my work and was thinking, my unseeing eyes gazing out at a path of stepping stones that ran between two little hills and around a big stone lantern before disappearing in a group of small trees. "What are you thinking, Oetsu-san?" asked Mrs. Sato. "You look worried." Turning, I saw real concern on her face. Perhaps under the influence of the school, my reserve was beginning to melt. At any rate, I told her of my trouble. At once she was all sympathy. "I am ashamed that we have no shrine," she said, "for we have not even the excuse of being Christians. We are nothing. It is the fashion lately to adopt the Western way, and we have no house shrine. But there is one in the nun's house at the end of the garden." "The nun's house at the end of the garden?" I repeated in great astonishment. She explained that the land on which they lived had once belonged to an old temple, where priestesses were in charge, which, on account of the changing times, had grown very poor. The property had been sold to Major Sato on condition that a little thatched hut, once belonging to a temple servitor, should be allowed to remain as the home of a very old and very holy nun, who wished to spend her life in this much-loved spot. That evening we went to see her, walking over the stepping stones between the little hills and around the stone lantern to where, through the foliage, I could see a small house surrounded by a low brush fence. Faint candlelight twinkled through the paper doors, and I heard the gentle, familiar ton-ton, ton-ton of soft wooden drum and the low chanting of Buddhist words. I bowed my head, and in the darkness homesick tears came to my eyes. Mrs. Sato opened the humble bamboo gate. "Pardon, may we enter?" she called gently. The chanting ceased, the doors slid back, and kindly looking, very aged nun in a gray cotton robe welcomed us cordially. The room was simply furnished, except that on one side stood a very beautiful temple shrine of gilded lacquer. I was darkened by age and costumed in incense smoke. Before the gilded Buddha lay a pile of worn chanting books and the small wooden drum we had heard. The nun was gentle and sweet like my grandmother, and it was easy for me to explain my trouble and show her the paper holding the sacred name. Lifting it to her forehead, she shook it to the shrine and reverently placed it before the Buddha. Then we had a simple service, such as we used to have in Honorable Grandmother's room at home. And when I came away, I left the precious paper in the safe keeping of her shrine. After that, on the last Friday of every month, I used to visit the holy nun and listen to her soft voice chant the service in memory of Father's death day. End of chapter 13. Take a break and eat another bread. Oh, the heck? Have you ever had that kind of experience before, Palm Star? Where you feel like you went somewhere and you feel really out of place? Is that how you feel? Well, I mean, you're not wrong. I managed to survive somehow. It's good. That's all we can do, is move forward. I'd say that I spent my whole life. I was born, in a different place from the moon. But then I grew up on this planet. So I never really felt like I belonged. But since I grew up here, what if I go back? I would still feel out of place there too, because I know nothing of the culture or anything. I didn't know Japan was the moon. I told you I'm a moon princess. I'm from the moon. Gosh. Pay attention. But yeah, being born somewhere and then being raised in a different country with different culture and traditions, and then when you go back, you feel really out of place. But you also feel out of place being raised in this different country. Ma'am, you know I don't. Well, this is a review lesson for ya. That's why I feel out of place. What? That you're not a boomer? You don't have a notebook? I don't need books. I need money. Don't we all? Don't we all? That's why today, when I got my filling put in, they gave me the option, like, do I want the filling, a new filling, which is cheaper, or do I want a crown, which is more expensive? And I'm like, let's go for the filling. But knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. All right. That's why I'm living tax free. I am paying taxes to this crappy government. Oh man. What? Is it my ASMR? That my message didn't go through. Yeah, I don't know what's up with YouTube. Alright. Chapter 14. Lessons. Oh, well, I ain't paying taxes. You're lucky, bro. You're lucky. I pay too much taxes. And what do I get? Nothing. Lessons. Our time in school was supposed to be equally divided between Japanese and English. But since I had been already carefully drilled in Japanese studies, I was able to put my best efforts in English. My knowledge of that language was very limited. I could read and write a little, but my spoken English was scarcely understandable. I had, however, read a number of translations of English books, and more valuable than all else, I possessed a supply of scattered knowledge obtained from a little set of books that my father had brought me from the capital when I was only a child. They were translations compiled from various sources and published by one of the progressive book houses of Tokyo. I did not know whose idea it was to translate and publish these 10 little paper volumes, but whoever it was holds my lasting gratitude. They brought the first shafts of light that opened to my eager mind the wonders of the Western world. And from then I was led to countless other friends and companions who, in the years since, had brought to me such a wealth of knowledge and happiness that I cannot think what life would have been without them. How well I remember the day they came. Father had gone to Tokyo on one of his window towards growing days trips. That was always an important event in our lives, for he brought back with him not only wonderful stories of his journey, but also gifts of strange and beautiful things. Mother has said that he would be home at the close of the day, and I spent the afternoon sitting on the porch, watching the slow lengthening shadows of garden trees. I had placed my high wooden clogs on a stepping stone just at the edge of the longest shadow, and as the sun crept farther, I moved them from stone to stone, following the sunshine. I think I must have had a vague feeling that I could thus hasten the slanting shadow into the long straight line, which would mean sunset. At last, and before the shadow had quite straightened, I hurriedly snatched up the clogs and clattered across the stones, for I had heard the jinrikisha man's cry of "Okaeri" just outside the gate. I could scarcely bear my joy, and I have a bit of guilt in my heart. Yet when I recalled how crookedly I pushed those clogs into the neat box of shelves in the shoe-off alcove of the vestibule. The next moment, the men, perspiring and laughing, came trotting up the door where we, servants and all, were gathered, our heads bowed to the floor, all in the quiver of excitement and delight, but of course everybody gravely saying the proper words of greeting. Then, my duty done, I was caught up in my father's arms, and we went to honorable grandmother, who was the only one of the household who might wait in her room for the coming of master of the house. That day was one of the memory stones of my life, for among all the wonderful and beautiful things which were taken from the willow wood box straddled over the shoulders of the servants was the set of books for me. I can see them now, 10 small volumes of tough Japanese paper, tied together with silk cord and marked Tales of the Western Seas. They held extracts from Peter Parley's World History, National Reader, Wilson's Readers, and many short poems and tales from the classic authors in English literature. The charm of delight that rare things give came to me during days and weeks, even months and years, from these books. I can recite whole pages of them now. There was a most interesting story of Christopher Columbus. It was not translated literally, but adapted so that the Japanese mind would readily grasp the thought without being buried in a puzzling mass of strange customs. All facts of the wonderful discovery were stated truthfully, but Columbus was pictured as a fisher lad, and somewhere in the story there were figured a lacquer bowl and a pair of chopsticks. These books had been my inspiration during all my years of childhood, and when in my study of English at school, my clumsy mind began to grasp the fact that, hidden beneath the puzzling words, were continuations of stories I knew, and of ideas similar to those I had found in the old familiar books that I had loved so well. My delight was unbounded. Then I began to read eagerly. I would bend over my desk, hurrying, guessing, skipping whole lines, stumbling along, my dictionary wide open beside me, but I not having time to look, and yet, in some marvelous way, catching ideas. And I never wearied. The fascination was like that of a moon-gazing party, where, while we watched from the hillside platform, a floating cloud was sailed across the glorious disk, and we, silent, trembling with excitement, would wait for the glory of the coming moment. In the same way, a half-hidden thought, elusive, tantalizing, would fill me with the breathless hope that the next moment light would come. Another thing about English books was that, as I read, I was constantly discovering shadowy replies to the unanswered questions of my childhood. Old English books were a source of deepest joy. I am afraid that I should not have been so persistent or so successful in my English studies. Could I have readily obtained translations of the books I was so eager to read? Tokyo bookshops at the time were beginning to be flooded with translations of English, French, German, and Russian books. And these generally, if not scientific treatises, were classics translated as a rule by our best scholars, but they were expensive to purchase and difficult for me to obtain in any other way. To read, even stumbly, in the original, the books in the school library was my only resource, and it became one of my greatest pleasures. Excepting English, all of my studies history was the favorite, and I liked and understand best the historical books of the Old Testament. The figurative language was something like Japanese. The old heroes had the same virtues and the same weaknesses of our ancient samurai. The patriarchal form of government was like ours, and the family system based upon it pictured so plainly on our homes that the meaning of many questioned passages was far less puzzling to me than were the explanations of the foreign teachers. In my study of English literature, it seems odd that, of all the treasures that I gathered, the one which was best has been most lasting as a vivid picture is that of Tennyson's Dora. Probably this was because of its having been used by a famous Japanese writer as the foundation of a novel called Tanema no Himeyuri, Lily of the Valley. The story of Dora, being a tale of the firstborn of an aristocratic family disinherited because he loved a rustic lass of humble class, and the subsequent tragedy resulting from the difference in training of different social circles, was a tale familiar and understandable to us. It was skillfully handled, the author, with wonderful word pictures, adapting Western life and the thought to Japanese conditions. The Lily of the Valley appeared at just the time when the young mind of Japan, both high and humble, was beginning to seek emancipation from the Stoic philosophy, which for centuries had been the core of our well-bred training, and it touched the heart of the public. The book rushed with a storm of popularity all through the land, and was read by all classes, in which was unusual by both men and women. It is said that Her Imperial Majesty became so interested in reading it that she sat up all one night while her court ladies, sitting silent in the next room, wearily waited. I think it was my third year in school that a wave of excitement over love stories struck Tokyo. All the schoolgirls were wildly interested. When translations were to be had, we passed them from hand to hand through the school, but mostly we had to struggle along in English, picking out love sayings from the novels and poems in our school library. Enoch Arden was our hero. We were familiar with loyalty and sacrifice as part of a wife, and understood perfectly why Annie should have so long withstood the advances of Philip, but the unselfishness of the faithful Enoch was so rare as to be much appreciated. The hearts of Japanese girls are no different from those of girls of other countries, but for centuries, especially in samurai homes, we had been strictly trained to regard duty, not feeling, as the standard of relations between man and woman. Thus, our unguided readings sometimes give us warped ideas on this unknown subject. The impression I received was that love, as pictured in the Western books, was interesting and pleasant, sometimes beautiful in sacrifice, like that of Enoch Arden, but not to be compared in strength, nobility, or loftiness of spirit to the affection of parent for child, or the loyalty between lord and vassal. Had my opinion been allowed to remain wordless, it probably would never have caused me annoyance, but it was destined to see the light. We had a very interesting literature society, which held an occasional special meeting. to which we invited the teachers as guests. With an anxious pride to have a fine entertainment, we frequently planned our program first and afterward select the girls for the various tasks. The result was that sometimes the subject chosen was beyond the capacity of the girl to handle. At one time, this rule brought disaster to me, for we never shirked any duty to which we were assigned. On this occasion, I was asked to prepare a 3-page essay in English. Having one of the cardinal virtues for a subject, I puzzled over which to select of faith, hope, charity, love, prudence, and patience. By recalling that our Bible teacher frequently quoted, God is love, I thought that there I had a foundation, and so chose my topic, love. I began the love of the Divine Father. Then, under the influence of my late reading, I drifted along, rather vaguely, I fear, on the effect of love on the lives of celebrated characters in history and poetry. But I did not know how to handle so awkward a subject, and reached my limit in both knowledge and vocabulary before the 3 pages were filled. Faithfulness to duty, however, still held firm, and I wrote on, finally concluding with these words. Love is like a powerful medicine. When properly used, it will prove a pleasant tonic, and sometimes may even preserve life. But when misused, it can ruin nations, as seen in the lives of Cleopatra and the beloved Empress of Emperor Genzo of Great China. At the close of my reading, one teacher remarked, "This is almost desecration." It was years before I understood what the criticism meant. For a while, my great interest in English reading filled all my hours of leisure, but there came a time when my heart longed for the dear old stories of Japan, and I wrote to my mother, asking her to send me some books from home. Among others, she selected a popular classic called Hakkenden, which I especially loved. It is the longest novel ever written in Japanese language, and our copy, Japanese bound and elaborately illustrated, consisted of 180 volumes. With great effort, Mother succeeded in obtaining a foreign bound copy in 2 thick volumes. I welcomed these books with joy and was amazed when one of the teachers, seeing them in my bookcase, took them away, saying they were not proper books for me to read. To me, Hakkenden, with its powerful symbolism, was one of the most inspiring books I have ever read. It was written in the 18th century by Bakin, our great philosopher, novelist, and so musical is the literature, and so lofty the ideals, that frequently it has been compared by the Japanese of learning to Milton's Paradise Lost and the Divine Comedy of Dante. The author was a strong believer in the unusual theory of spiritual transmigration, and his story is based on that belief. The tale is of the daimyo Satomi, who, with his almost starving retainers, was holding his castle against a besieging army. Knowing that the strength of the enemy lay alone in their able general, he desperately offered everything he possessed, even to his precious daughter, to anyone brave enough to destroy his enemy. Satomi's faithful dog, a handsome wolf-hound named Yotsubusa, bounded away, and the next morning appeared before his master, carrying by its long hair the head of Satomi's foe. With their leader gone, the enemy was thrown into confusion, and Satomi's warriors, with a mighty rush, put them to flight. Thus was the province restored to peace and prosperity. Then, so bitterly did Satomi regret his promise that he was enraged at the very sight of the faithful animal to whom he owed his good fortune. But his beautiful daughter, the Princess Fusei, pitied the wronged animal. "The word of a samurai, once uttered, cannot be recalled," she said. "It is my duty to uphold the honor of my father's word." So the filial daughter went with Yotsubusa to a mountain cave, where she spent her time in praying to the gods that a soul might be given to the brave animal. And with every murmured prayer, the noble nature of the dumb Yotsubusa drew nearer to the borderline of human intelligence. One day, there came to the mountain a loyal retainer of Satomi. He saw, just within the cave, the Princess Fuse sitting before the shrine holding an open book. Before her, like a faithful vassal, Yotsubusa listened with bowed head to the holy reading. Believing he was doing a noble deed, the retainer lifted his gun and fired. The bullet, swift and strong, was guided by fate. It passed directly through the body of Yotsubusa and on, piercing the heart of the Princess Fuse. At that instant, the freed spirit of the princess, as 8 shining stars in a floating mist, rose from her body and floated softly through the sky to the 8 corners of the world. Each star was a virtue: loyalty, sincerity, filial piety, friendship, charity, righteousness, courtesy, and wisdom. Fate guided each star to a human home, and in course of time, into each of those homes a son was born. As they blossomed into manhood, fate brought the youths together, and the reunited 8 virtues become heroic vassals, through whom came glory to the name of Satomi. So the spirit of the filial daughter brought honor to her father's name. I cannot understand why this miracle story, filled with lofty symbolism, could be more objectionable than the many fables and fairy tales of personified animals that I had read in English literature. But, after much pondering, I concluded that thoughts, like language, on one side of the world are straightforward and literal, and on the other, vague, mystical, and visionary. At the end of my school life, my beloved books were returned to me. I have them now, battered, loose-leafed, and worn, and I still love them. As time passed on, I learned to like almost everything about my school, even many other things which at first I had found most trying. But there was one thing which from the very first I had enjoyed with my whole heart. The school building was surrounded by large grounds with tall trees. A small lawn near the principal doorway was well cared for, but beyond was an extensive stretch of weedy grass and untrained shrubbery. There were no stone lanterns, no pond with darting goldfish, and no curving bridge. Just big trees with unbound branches, uncut grass, and freedom to grow. At my home, there was one part of the garden that was supposed to be wild. The trees were twisted like wind-blown mountain pines, the stepping stones marked an irregular path across ground covered with pine needles. The fence was of growing cedar, peeping between uneven rows of split bamboo, and the gate was of brushwood tied with rough twine. But someone was always busy trimming the pines or cutting the hedge, and every morning Gia wiped off the stepping stones, and after sweeping beneath the pine trees, carefully scattered fresh pine needles gathered from the forest. There the wildest was only constant repression. But here at the school, everything was filled with the uplifting freshness of unrestrained freedom. This I enjoyed with a happiness so great that the very fact that such happiness could exist in the human heart was a surprise to me. One section of this wild ground the teachers divided into small gardens, giving one to each of the girls and providing any kind of flower seeds she wanted. This was a new delight. I already loved the free growth of trees and the grass on which I could walk even in my shoes. But this plant what you please garden gave me a wholly new feeling of personal right. I, with no violation of tradition, no stain on the family name, no shock to parent, teacher, or townspeople, no harm to anything in the world, was free to act. So instead of having a low bamboo fence around my garden, as most of the girls had, I went to the kitchen and coaxed the cook to give me some dried branches used for kindling. Then I made a rustic hedge, and in my garden, instead of flowers, I planted potatoes. No one knows of the sense of reckless freedom which this absurd act gave me, nor the consequences to which it led. It had unloosed my soul, and I stood listening. While from a strange tangle of unconventional smells and informal acts, of outspoken words and unhidden thoughts, of growing trees and untouched grass, the spirit of freedom came knocking at my door. End of chapter 14. There was a lot of talk about literature in this one. Have you read a lot of classic English literature, Palm Star? Might eat another bread while we talk. I'm getting more filling back in my mouth, so that's good. I don't have to hold my cheek away from my teeth anymore. Not even in school, like in high school, when you have to read like. I'm somewhat good listener. That's good. Maybe I'm a good reader. Like you didn't read Romeo and Juliet or The Scarlet Letter or The Giver. I'm not illiterate, but I'm not a big fan of reading. It's okay. I was just wondering, since a lot of schools like make students read like the classics. Oh, even I haven't read Hamlet. Oh, we had to read a little bit of the Odyssey too. You read them because the school forced you to read them. I frankly didn't care when I was in school. Okay, I was a nerd in school, so I loved reading. And reading is what helped me learn English really quick. I read a lot when I was like 6 years old, and I learned English faster than the rest of my siblings. Yeah, I picked up English faster. I just want to get out of there. you know, it was either I was oblivious, maybe I just didn't care, but I didn't think about I didn't think about the drama that typical school students have. I simply went there, I learned, I took my tests, and I went home. I didn't deal with any like petty school drama or anything. I think that is the definition of boomer schools. Where they just train kids to go into factories. That's true. That is very true. Yeah. Because they don't teach us anything to like prepare us for our independent life. No, they train us to go work in these monotonous factories. They don't teach us about healthcare. They don't teach us about taxes. You walked right into that one, didn't you? You set yourself up. Be a teacher, ma'am. I am a teacher. I'm teaching you stuff now. I'm screwed. It's okay. It's okay. It's not forever. It's only temporary. It's okay. That's not your forever place. Alright, drink some more water. I don't know, I don't have much skills. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at what you're good at. You're really knowledgeable about movies. Yeah, I have feeling back in my mouth now, but my jaw is really sore. Might have to take some Advil. Then again, I never tried other things like play a guitar or other things. I tried playing the guitar and I'm not patient, so I gave that up pretty quick. For sports. You know, I try to get into sports, but like Etable, my parents didn't approve a girl doing sports. So yeah, I didn't get to do sports. I just focused on my studies. So I'm not very good at sports either. Yeah, my parents were rough. Rough on me. They didn't let me go anywhere, didn't let me do anything. So when I got older and I like my solitude, they're like, why is she so weird? Why does she want to go anywhere? Like, really? You didn't allow me to go anywhere. So when I like to be in my room, there's a problem? B minus unacceptable on the 4, do you get an A plus? Actually, my parents they didn't keep track of our grades that much. But I was still a very good student. they didn't, well, I guess I wouldn't know. I never got low grades. But they're, like, my parents didn't know English very well. So, everything we learned in school, we had to learn by ourselves. So if I didn't know how to do, like, a math homework, I didn't have a parent to help me. I had to figure it out on my own. Same with writing papers and stuff like that. Like, I didn't have parents who knew the English language very well. I had to do it on my own. The internet helped me out a lot, in my opinion. Like Spark Notes. I'm a boomer. We couldn't rely on the internet. thought I couldn't get a job. Oh, I suppose so. But we'll count our blessings and focus on that. Yeah. Alrighty. Who goes to job fairs now? Exactly. Well, they still have that in like high school, like to help them figure out what kind of career path they want. But I don't really see that at like local community centers or anything like that anymore. It's mostly at schools. Then again, I went 3 times, but had no luck. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough out there. But you got this. We all got this. All right, chapter 15. We're halfway done. The world sucks. Yeah, it does. But we have to shift our way of thinking, you know? As the Buddhist teachings say, you have to look within yourself to change yourself to help you give you a better perspective on the outside world, you know? I want $1 million. Me too, me too. But alas, it's easier said than done. But we got this, right? We got this. Got this! Alright, chapter 15. Huh? How I became a Christian? What? Okay. I guess so. Chapter 15, how I became a Christian. Okay, what the heck? What the heck? Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's see. In my Nagaoka home, notwithstanding the love and care that surrounded me, my mind was always filled with unanswered questions. My education as a priestess had developed my mind, but it had grown in cramped silence, for liberal was my father and his views regarding my training. I was influenced by the home atmosphere of conservatism and rarely spoke, even to him, of my inmost thoughts. But occasionally this reserve was broken. Once, just after I had made many bows of farewell to the departing guest of the 300th death celebration of an ancestor, I asked, "Honorable Father, who is the first, the away back, the very beginning of our ancestors?" "Little daughter," Father gravely answered, "that is a presumptuous question for a well-bred girl to ask, but I will be honest and tell you that I do not know. Our great Confucius replied to his disciple concerning that very question, 'We know not life.' I was very young, but I well understood that I must in the future be more demure and womanly in my inquiries, and not ask questions with the freedom of a boy. The influence of my school life in Tokyo had been subtle. Unconsciously, I had expanded, until gradually I became convinced that asking questions was only part of a normal development. Then, for the first time in my life, I attempted to put into words some of the secret thoughts of my heart. This was gently encouraged by my tactful teachers, and as time passed on, I realized more and more that they were wonderfully wise for women, and my confidence in them grew. Not only this, but their effortless influence to inspire happiness changed my entire outlook on life. My childhood had been happy, but it had never known one throb of what may be called joyousness. I used to gaze at the full moon sailing in deep sky with all the poetic ecstasy of the Japanese heart, but always, like a shadow, came the thought, "It will grow less from tonight." Our flower viewings were a delight to me, but invariably, as I traveled homeward, I sighed to myself, "The lovely blossoms will fall before the winds tomorrow." So it was with everything. In the midst of gladness, I unconsciously sent out a heart search for a thread of sadness. I ascribe with this morbid tendency to the Buddhist teaching of my childhood, for there is a strain of hopeless sadness in all Buddha's thought. But my life at school blew into my heart a breath of healthful, cheery cheerfulness, as the restraints which had held me like a vise began to relax. So also there melted within me the tendency to melancholy. It could not be otherwise, for the teachers, whether working, playing, laughing, or even reproving, were a continual surprise. In my home, surprises had been infrequent. People bowed, walked, talked, and smiled exactly as they had bowed, walked, talked, and smiled yesterday, and the day before, in all in past time. But these astonishing teachers were never the same. They changed so unexpectedly in voice and manner with each person to whom they spoke, that their very changeableness was a refreshing attraction. They reminded me of cherry blossoms. Japanese people love flowers for what they mean. I was taught from babyhood that the plum, bravely pushing its blossoms through the snow of early spring, is our bridal flower because it is an emblem of duty through hardship. The cherry is beautiful, and it never fades, for the lightest breeze scatters the still fresh and fragrant petals into another beauty of tinted, floating clouds, which again changes to a carpet of delicate white and pink shells, like my teachers, always changing and always beautiful. Although I now know that my first impressions of American womanhood were exaggerated, I have never regretted this idealization, for through it I came to realize the tragic truth that the Japanese women, like the plum blossoms, modest, gentle, and bearing unjust hardships without complaint, is often little else than a useless sacrifice. While the American woman, self-respecting, untrampled, changing with quick adaptability to new conditions, carries inspiration to every heart, because her life, like the blossom of the cherry, blooms in freedom and naturalness. This realization was of slow growth, and it brought with it much silent questioning. From childhood, I had known, as did all Japanese people, that woman is greatly inferior to man. This I never questioned. It was fate. But as I grew older, I so constantly saw that fate brings inconvenience and humiliation to blameless people that I fell into a habit of puzzling in a crude, childish way over this great unkind power. At last the day came when my heart broke into open rebellion. Ever since the hard days before the Restoration, my mother had been subject to occasional attacks of asthma, which we all were sincere in believing was due to some unknown wrong committed by her in a previous existence. Once when, after a breathless struggle, I heard her gasp, "It is fate and must be borne." I ran to Ishi and asked indignantly why fate made my mother suffer. "It cannot be helped," she replied, with pitying tears in her eyes. "It is because of the unworthiness of a woman. But you must be calm, Etsubo-sama. The honorable mistress does not complain. She is proud to bear silently." I was too young to understand, but with my heart pounding in hot rebellion against the powerful, mysterious injustice, I pulled myself into Ishi's lap and, convulsively clinging to her, begged her to tell me a story, quick, of clashing swords and flying arrows, and heroes who fought and won. Japanese children were not taught that rebellious thoughts, if unexpressed, are a wrong to the gods, so the resentment in my heart grew. But as it grew there slowly drifted into, and curiously blended with it, a blind wonder why my mother and Ishi, when hardships came for which they were not to blame, should submit to it, not only dutifully and patiently. That, of course, it was their place as women to do, but with pride. Something within me cried out that, However dutiful they might be in act, their hearts ought to rebel. Yet I had known both unnecessarily to accept a humiliating blame that they knew was not theirs. That those two noble women should encourage self-humiliation, I resented more bitterly than I did the hard decree of fate. Of course, this thought was not clear in my mind at the time. Then, and for years later, my idea of fate, for in fate I firmly believed, was a vague, floating, stupendous power for which I felt only resentful wonder. Another puzzle came one midsummer airing day. It seems odd that it should have happened then, for airing days were the most carefree, happy time of the year for me. Then the go-downs were emptied, and long ropes stretched in the sunshine, and on which were hung torn banners bearing our crest. Old field curtains used in the camps of our ancestors, ancient regalia of house officers, and many odd-shaped garments belonging to what Ishi's fairy tales called the olden time. Beneath the low eaves were piles of clumsy horse armor, bound with faded ropes of twisted silk. The old war weapons, spears, battle axes, bows, and sheaths of arrows, stood in out of the way corners of the garden. All available space was utilized. Even the bridge posts and the stone lanterns were decorated with chain silk armor and lacquer helmets with fearful masks. The confusion was delightful. I loved it. And Father would walk around with me, showing me things and explaining their use, until, all perspiring and with eyes dazzled by the sun, we would go indoors and stumble through the clutter of halls to Animal Grandmother's room. That seemed to be the only place in the house in order. Everywhere else were busy servants, brushing, folding, or carrying, and at the same time all chattering gaily for airing days, although bringing hard work, were a happy diversion in a rather monotonous household, and always cordially welcomed by the servants. When Father and I reached Honorable Grandmother's room, we found ourselves suddenly shut away from all the turmoil into a place cool and quiet. I can see Father now, as, with a sigh of satisfaction, he closed the door behind him, and pushing aside the proffered cushion, bowed his head, thanks to Honorable Grandmother, and seating himself on the cool straw mat beside the open doors overlooking the shady, wild garden. There he would sit, fanning himself, talking about Honorable Grandmother of old times. Once, just after the noon meal of hot whale soup and eggplant, which was always served on airing days, Father went directly to his room. I was hurrying after him when I saw Gia and another manservant in their stiff crest dresses crossing the garden from the go-down. They were carrying reverentially a whitewood chest shaped like a temple box for sacred books. On the front, very large, was our crest, and around it was tied a straw rope with dangling Shinto papers. Many times I had seen the chest in the go-down, standing alone on a whitewood platform. It held family heirlooms, some of them centuries old. The men were on their way to a certain room which Mother had prepared, where the chest would be opened in silence, and the sacred articles carefully examined by men in ceremonial garments. I sat down listlessly on the edge of the porch, for I knew that Father, dressed in his stately kamishimo garments, would soon go to the room where the heirloom chest had been taken, and I should see him no more that afternoon. On airing days, I generally followed him wherever he went, but across the threshold of the room I should not be allowed to step. I did not wonder why. It had always been so. But as I sat alone on the porch, I began to think, and after a while, I hunted up Ishi. Ishi, I said, I go everywhere else with Father. Why cannot I be in him in the room where they are airing the sacred things? Etsubo-sama, she replied in the most matter-of-fact tone, and as she shook out the long fringe of an old-fashioned incense ball. It is because you were born a daughter to your father instead of a son. I felt that her words were a personal reproach, and with the age-old patient submission of the Japanese woman, I walked slowly toward Honorable Grandmother's room. It was comforting to turn my mind towards my stately, noble grandmother, to whom the entire household, even father, looked up with reverence. Then, suddenly, like a breath of cold wind, came the thought that even my saintly grandmother would not dare touch the sacred things that were used to honor the Shinto gods. She always attended to the Buddhist shrine, but it was father's duty to care for the white Shinto shrine. During his absence, Jia or another manservant took his place, for no woman was worthy to handle such holy things. And yet, the great god of Shinto was a woman, the sun goddess. Amateresu! That night, I was bold enough to ask my father if this honorable mother was an unworthy woman like all others. "What do you think, little daughter?" he asked, after a moment's hesitation. "It cannot be," I replied. "You honor her too greatly for it to be true." He smiled and tenderly touched my head with his hand. "Continue to believe so, little daughter," he said gently, "and yet do not forget the stern teachings of your childhood. They form the current of crystal stream that, as it flows through the ages, keeps Japanese women worthy, like your grandmother." It was not until long afterward, when the knowledge of later years had broadened my mind, that I comprehended his hidden meaning that a woman may quietly harbor independent thought if she does not allow it to destroy her gentle womanhood. The night that this thought came to me, I wrote in my diary, "Useless sacrifice leads to only a sigh. Self-respect leads to freedom and hope." Beyond the wall on one side of our school was a rough path leading past several small villages with rice fields and patches of clover scattered between. One day, when a teacher was taking a group of us girls for a walk, we came upon a dry rice field dotted with wildflowers. We were gathering them with merry chattering and laughter when two village farmers passed by, walking slowly and watching us curiously. "What is the world coming to?" said one, "when workable aged young misses waste time wandering around through bushes and wild grass?" "They were grasshoppers trying to climb the mountain," the other replied, "but the sun will scorch them with scorn. There can be only pity for the young man who takes one of those for his bride." The men were rough and ignorant, but they were men. And though we all laughed, not one of the girls was far enough from the shackles of her mother's day not to feel a shadow of discomfort as we walked homeward. The teacher paused as we came to the moss-covered stone wall of the old shrine and pointed to a nearby cherry tree, young and thrifty, growing out of the hollow of another tree whose fallen trunk was so old and twisted that it looked like a rough, scaled dragon. Beside it was one of the wooden standards so often seen in the artistic or noted spot. On the tablet was inscribed the poem, "The blossoms of today draw strength from the roots of 1,000 years ago." "This tree is like you girls," said the teacher with a smile. "Japan's beautiful old civilization has given its strength to young women of today. Now it is your duty to grow bravely and give to new Japan, in return, a greater strength and beauty than even the old possessed. Do not forget." We walked on homeward. Just as we reached our gate in the hedge, one of the girls, who had been rather quiet, turned to me. "Nevertheless," she said defiantly, "the grasshoppers are climbing the mountain into the sunlight." As I learned to value womanhood, I realized more and more that my love of freedom and my belief in my right to grow toward it meant more than freedom to act, to talk, to think. Freedom also claimed a spiritual right to grow. I do not know exactly how I became a Christian. It was not a sudden thing. It seems to have been a natural spiritual development, so natural that only a few puzzles stand out clearly as I took back along the path. As I read and thought and felt, my soul reached out into the unknown, and gradually, easily, almost unconsciously, I drifted out of a faith of philosophy, mysticism, and resignation into one of high ideals, freedom, cheerfulness, and hope. Of the wondering glory of what I consider the greatest faith of all the world I do not speak, of that many know, and the selfish gain to me is beyond all words of all languages. When I was sent to the mission school, the fact that the teachers were of another religion was not considered at all. They were thought of only as teachers of the language and manners of America. So when I wrote to Mother asking her consent to becoming a Christian, I know she was greatly surprised, but she was a wise woman. She replied, "My daughter, this is an important thing. I think it would be best for you to wait until vacation. Then we will talk of it." So I postponed being baptized, and when my vacation came, I went to Nagaoka. The people there knew little of Christianity. The only impression most of them had was that it was a curious belief, lacking in ceremony, which converts were required to trample upon sacred things. There existed, especially among the old, a strong distance against Jakyo, the evil sect, but it held no vital, forceful bitterness. The people of Nagaoka looked upon the stories of Japan's Christian martyrs as a distant and pitiful thing, but they had none of the shuddering horror felt in some communities of southern Japan, whose memories of the tragedies of 4 centuries ago had reason to live. My mother, who had learned from father to be tolerant of the opinions of others, had no prejudice against the new religion, but she believed that the great duty of life for sons and daughters consisted in a rigid observance of the ritual for ancestor worship and the ceremonies in memory of the dead. When I first reached home, her heart was heavy with dread, but she learned that my new faith did not require disrespect to ancestors. Her relief and gratitude were pathetic, and she readily gave her consent. But honorable grandmother, my proud, loyal grandmother, it was impossible for her to understand, and I think my becoming a heretic was to her lifelong sorrow. Her grief was my heaviest cross. It was hard, too, to visit my relatives and friends. They look upon me as a curiosity, and my mother was in a continual state of explanation and apology. One old aunt closed the doors of her shrine and pasted white paper over them that the ancestors might be spared the knowledge of my peculiarity. Another aunt, who invited me out to dinner, served no fish, feeling that, since I was so pleasantly removed from ordinary life, I could not be feasted in the usual way. After discarding one plan after another, she finally concluded it would be both harmless and respectful for her to treat me as a priest. All these things among the friends that I had known from babyhood hurt me. I could bravely have borne persecution, but to be set apart as something strange almost broke my heart. How I longed for my father, he would have understood, but I was alone in the midst of kindly ignorance. Everybody loved me, but they all looked at me in helpless pity. At first, I was unhappy, but my 3 months at home changed everything. But for my friends and for myself, or both for my friends and for myself. When I returned to school, I carried with me all the respect and love of the home friends that had always been mine, and which, thank God, I have kept until now. I think I am a true Christian. At least my belief has given me untold comfort and a perfect heart satisfaction, but it has never separated me from my Buddhist friends. They have respect for this strange belief of mine, for they feel that, although I am loyal to the Christian God, I still kept the utmost reverence for my fathers and respect for the faith that was the highest and holiest thing they knew. End of chapter 15. Okay. I guess I won't comment on that today. I don't want to talk about religion today. that is a sensitive topic. But it's nice that she was able to feel the courage and confidence to figure that all out for herself. Me no expert. You know, the study of philosophy is always very interesting to me. So hearing why someone has such a strong faith to a religion always really intrigued me. You know? I'm gonna take a small break. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and I'll be back for the last chapter. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. I'm gonna eat more of my bread. I hope you've eaten today, Palm Star. Hope you're not hungry. Are you still keeping sandwiches in your fridge? You know what? I never thought about that. Like I've never met anyone who saves sandwiches in their fridge, like ready-made sandwiches. You see cold sandwiches in grocery stores, but that's different. They're trying to make money. You're trying to make money. I've never seen anyone do that at home, where they make their sandwiches and leave it in the fridge. Like at home, I thought that if you want a sandwich, you like go and make it right then and there, not make it and then leave it in the fridge. At least that's what I do. I feel like if I do that, the mayo kind of like makes the bread soggy. Whereas at the store, I don't think they put mayo in the sandwiches. It comes separate in like a little packet. I'm lazy AF, and I don't want to make it when I'm lazy. You know. I forgot who said it. Was it Elon Musk? Where he's like, When I'm active, I'll do it. Someone said that they would rather hire a lazy person because they know shortcuts. They know how to get things done like more efficiently. So that's you. That's you, Ponsai. Yeah. I thought so. So yeah, you know how to get things done efficiently. You're not lazy, you're just efficient. I don't believe the ideology. Lazy people need certain skills to get that type of job. I'm trying to make you feel better. And agree. Aww. I guess you gotta go work for Elon then. Alright, I got one more bite and then we'll finish the chapter. Really, I have something that makes me feel better. It's called flowers. Oh, what's your favorite flower? The flowers help a lot. I'll remember that. What's your favorite flower? Huh? You mean the magic wink wink flowers? Something boomers don't like. You know, it's not that I don't like it. Boomers invented it. It wasn't me. The devil's lettuce. That's still so funny. It's definitely you. No, I'm very indifferent to it. I don't really care. And I'm say so, so I've never done it. If you like it, go for it. Say sick right now. What? That I'm indifferent to it? Or that I'm say so? It's true. I'm say so, bro. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm very pure. I'm very pure. Didn't you see the other day? I protected chat from six boobies. Say so Vtubers don't do bathtub streams. But I was wearing a swimsuit. Bro. That's how say so I am. I take baths with a swimsuit. Sure, miss. I am as pure as the snow where I grew up in. I grew up with abundant piles of snow. No sussiness. Yeah. Sussiness, that's so clever. Sussiness. It could be used as like sussiness and like a business sussiness. You are clever. All right. We're going to finish the last chapter. Chapter 16. Sailing unknown seas. Thank good I'm up in the clouds. Literally. Not right now, you mean? Thank goodness I'm up. Oh, thank goodness I'm up in the clouds. No. Okay, last chapter, chapter 16. I don't know my rules. Are you sure you're not up in the clouds right now? Sailing unknown seas. So, Ethical is gonna go to America. Another happy year I spent in school. Then I returned to Nagaoka, realizing myself how little I knew, but in the eyes of my friends, an educated woman. This was an unenviable reputation, unenviable reputation, one which I knew I should have to live down if I wanted to stand well in the eyes of my old friends during the last months before I started from my new home in America. Each vacation I had the same experience, for Nagaoka minds, although simple, loving, and true, were also stubborn, and no year could I begin where I had left off the year previous. My friends all loved me, and they had become somewhat reconciled to my change of faith. But they could not help thinking that after all, I must be peculiar minded to enjoy being so unlike other women. So again, I had to accommodate myself to the discomfort of being received formally, and again patiently watch the gradual melting away of outward reserve until I could once more reach the faithful hearts beneath. But I finally found myself settled into the old life, only now with the added excitement of my preparations for going to America. As a Japanese marriage is a family matter, it is not the custom for outsiders to present gifts. But the circumstances connected with mine were so unusual that many Nagaoka families sent large mochi cakes of red and white, most of them in the shape of storks or twin lovebirds, emblems of congratulations and happy long life. Distant relatives, old retainers, and family servants, even those married and living at some distance, remembered me with wreaths of silk and rolls of red and white mawata. The light, soft silk floss, so useful in every Japanese family, an interlining for cloaks, dresses for various delicate household purposes. Most of these homely gifts were wholly inappropriate for life in America, but they expressed so much personal interest in me and loyalty to my father's family that I was deeply touched. And the dinners were many, most of them from relatives, where I, always seated next to mother in place of honor, was served red rice and red snapper, head and all, and soup with 7, 9, or 11 vegetables. All this was exciting in a quiet way, but the real excitement came when brother, whose home was now in Tokyo, came up to be with us for the last weeks at home. He brought a letter from Matsuo, saying that a kind American lady, for the sake of a Japanese girl of my school in whom she was interested, had asked Matsuo to take me to her home when I arrived, and that we were to be married there. Mother read the letter with bowed head, and when she looked up, I was astonished to see the shadow of tears in her eyes. Poor mother! Almost 6 years she had held, deep hidden in her heart, the shadowy dread that had assailed her when we first heard of Matsuo's decision to remain in America. For it was absolutely without precedent in Japanese life that a bride should go to a husband who had no mother or elder sister to guide and instruct the young wife in her new duties. This message was like a whisper of welcome from the thoughtful heart of a stranger, and that stranger was a woman brought to mother a feeling of safe, warm comfort. Lifting the letter to her forehead, she bowed in the ordinary form of expressing thanks, but said nothing, and not one of us realized that beneath her quiet manner a flood of grateful relief was sweeping away the anxiety of years. That night, as I passed her open door, I caught the fragrance of incense. What? The shrine was open. Matsuo's letter had been placed within, and before it the curling incense was carrying upward the deep thanks of a mother's heart. Brother watched some of the preparations for my departure with evident disapproval. "Those things are all right for a bride who is to live in Japan," he said, "but all nonsense for Etsubo. What would she do with long crescent curtain and the doll festival set? Matsuo, being a merchant, will have to pay a big duty, and they're useless in America anyway." At first, honorable grandmother and mother insisted in silence, but one day, mother gently but firmly protested. They may be useless," she said. "Of Etsuko's future I know nothing, but now she is a Japanese bride, going from her home to her husband. It is my duty to see that she goes as well prepared as possible, according to the custom of her family. So it is decided." Brother grumbled, but it is the women in a Japanese family who decides all things in connection with the great interior, so the preparation went on according to rule. Mother, however, conceded some things to brother's superior knowledge of America, and the rolls of the silk and crepe brocade, which came arranged in the shape of storks, pine trees, and the many beautiful emblems for happy life, were given to sisters and other relatives, and my doll festival set, which every girl takes with her to her husband's home, was left behind. The question of my personal trousseau was so important that a family council was called. Brother's ideas were positively startling. Most of the relatives were too honest to offer guessing suggestions, and none were well enough informed to make practical ones. Matters were into a rather puzzling and still undecided state when the Tokyo uncle, whose opinion the majority of the relatives looked upon with respect, sided with brother in favoring the American custom. "Among European people," he said, "it is considered extreme discourtesy to expose the body. Even men, whose liberty is of course greater than that of women, have to wear high collars and stiff cuffs. The Japanese dress, being low in the neck and scanty of skirt is improper for wear among the European people. Since most of my relatives knew almost nothing of foreign customs, my uncle's statement made a great impression. Mother looked very anxious, for this was a new aspect of the subject, but Honorable Grandmother's loyal heart was wounded and aroused. To her, Japan was the land of the gods, and the customs of its people ought to not be criticized. Very quietly, but with great dignity, she protested. According to pictures, she said, the pipe-shaped sleeves of the European customs lack grace. They are like the coats our coolies wear. It grieves me to think a time has come when my prosperity are willing to humiliate themselves to the level of humble coolies. Honorable Grandmother, being the most honored one in the council, her opinion carried weight, and it was finally decided to prepare Japanese dress only, leaving my European clothes to be selected after I reached America. Brother had arranged that I should travel in the care of Mr. Holmes, an English tea merchant, a business friend of my uncle's, who, and with his family, was returning to Europe by way of America. At last the day came when all arrangements were complete, all farewells said, and Brother and I again started together a trip to Tokyo. But by this time, the puffing land steamer had, step by step, advanced over and through the mountains, and our former journey of 8 days was now reduced to 18 hours of jolting, rattling discomfort. We did not talk much, but sometimes at large stations, we could get out for a few minutes of rest and change. At Takasaki, we had just returned to our seats after a brisk walk up and down the platform when Brother anxiously stuck his head out the window. "What is it?" I asked. "I'm looking to see if you left your wooden clogs on the platform again," he replied with the old twinkle in his eye. We both laughed. A reminder of the trip was a pleasant 3 hours, which I like to remember. In Tokyo, there were more dinners of red rice and whole fish, more useless, loving gifts, more farewells with heartwarm throbs within and cool, formal bows without, and then I found myself standing on the deck of a big steamer, with my brother by my side, and on the water below, awaiting launch to take ashore the last friends of the passengers. The third long, hoarse blast of the warning whistle sounded, and with an odd tightness in my throat, I bent in a deep, long bow. Brother stood close to my sleeve. "Little Etsubo," he said, with a strange tenderness in his voice. "I have been a poor brother, in whom you could not take pride, but I have never known an unselfish person except you." I saw his shadow bow, but when I lifted my head, he was in the crowd pressing towards the ship's steps, his head held high, and his laughing face lifted in a shout of farewell to Mr. Holmes. After the first few days, the voyage was pleasant, but Mr. Holmes, who was not very strong, was ill most of the way over, and her maid was busy with the care of the baby. So I spent much time on the deck alone, either gazing quietly out over the water or reading one of the several Japanese magazines that had been given to me just as I started. Mr. Holmes was most kind and attentive, but I was not used to men, and was so silent that he, knowing Japanese people, must have understood, for after the first day he would see me comfortably settled in my deck chair, then go away, leaving his own chair next to mine vacant except for the plate of fruit or cup of tea which he would have occasionally sent to me. Because of my dress in the magazine, the passengers concluded that I could not understand English, and remarks about me or about Japanese were frequently made within my hearing by persons sitting near me. They were not unkind, but it seemed discourteous to be listening to words not meant for my ears. So one morning I took an English book up to the deck with me and was reading it when a lady walking by paused. "I see you understand English," she said pleasantly, and remained for a little chat. She must have passed the news around, for after that I not only heard no more remarks about the quiet little Jap, but at various times several ladies stopped for a short conversation. My place at the table was beside Mrs. Holmes. She rarely came, but I never felt alone, for the other passengers, seeming to feel responsible for the American lady's charge, were unceasingly kind in their attentions. Instead, there was an atmosphere of free action and cheerful speech among the passengers that was as refreshing as the salty, breezy air. Everyone said, "Good morning," to everyone else, friends or strangers. No one seemed to care. One day, I saw two well-dressed ladies greet each other with a merry, "Hello, wonderful morning, isn't it? Let's take our constitutional together." And swinging into step, they marched off like a couple of soldier comrades, now bowing, no formal words. Everything was free and cordial. This lack of formality was very surprising, but it was most interesting, and it held a certain charm. Of course, I watched the dresses of these foreign ladies with the greatest interest. My uncle's remarks regarding the low neck and scanty skirts of the Japanese dress had astonished and troubled me very much. And since I was the only Japanese woman on the ship among some 50 or 60 American ladies, I felt responsible not to disgrace my nation. The Japanese dress is so made that it can be properly worn only when put on in a certain way. But I, inspired with a combination of girlish modesty and loyal patriotism, tried to pull the embroidered folds at the neck close up to my chin. But I remained seated as much as possible so my scanty skirt would not be noticed. The weather was unpleasant at the beginning of the voyage, and few ladies came on the deck, but it was not long before the promenading commenced, and then I began to suspect that my uncle's opinion might not be wholly correct. But it was not until an evening entertainment where there was dancing that I entirely lost faith in his judgment. There the high collar and stiff cuffs of the gentlemen were to be seen, just as he has said, but I found that most of the ladies' dresses were neither high in the neck nor full in the skirt, and I saw many other things which mystified and shocked me. The thin waist, made of lawn and dainty lace, were to me most indelicate, more so, I think, unreasonable though it seemed, than even the bare neck. I have seen a Japanese servant, in the midst of heavy work in the hot kitchen, with her kimono slipped down, displaying one entire shoulder. And I have seen a woman nursing her baby in the street, or a naked woman in a hotel bath, but until that evening on the steamer, I have never seen a woman publicly displaying bare skin just for the purpose of having it seen. For a while, I tried hard to pretend to myself that I was not embarrassed, but finally, with my cheeks flaming with shame, I slipped away and crept into my cabin berth, wondering greatly over the strange civilization of which I was so soon to be a part. I have no spirit of criticism in writing this. Indeed, after years of residence in this country, I have so changed that I can look back with my surprised amusement at my first impressions. The customs of all countries are strange to untrained eyes, and one of the most interesting mysteries of my life here is my own gradual but inevitable mental evolution. Now I can go to dinner or a dance and watch the ladies in evening dress with pleasure. To me, the scene is frequently as artistic and beautiful as a lovely painting. And I know those happy-faced women walking with the courteous gentlemen or swinging to the time of gay music are just as innocent and sweet of heart as they are gentle and hushed women of my own country over the sea. My experiences in San Francisco were strange and puzzling, but delightful in their novelty. The astonishing little room at the Palace Hotel, which we had no sooner entered than it began to rise upward, finally depositing us in a large apartment where we had a view as vast as from a mountain top. The smooth white bathtub, which could be filled with hot water without fuel or delay. The locked doors everywhere, for in Japan we never had a lock. All of these strange things, combined with bewildering sense of the bigness of everything, was almost overpowering. This sense of the enormous size of things, wide streets, tall buildings, great trees, was also pronounced inside the hotel. The ceilings were lofty, the furniture was large, the chairs were high, and the sofas were wide, with the back far from the front. Everything seemed made of race of giants, which, after all, is not so far from the truth, for that is what Americans are, a great people, with nothing cramped or repressed about them, both admirable and faulty in a giant way, with large person, generous purse, broad mind, strong heart, and free soul. My first impression has never changed. We were in San Francisco only a few days, but everything was so hurried, so noisy, and so strange that my brain settled into a half numb condition of non expectancy. Then something happened. So simple, so homely a thing it was, that it stands out in my memory clear and separate from all else connected with my short stay in that wonderful city. A gentle, white haired old minister who had lived in Japan came to make a friendly call. After the words of greeting, he unwrapped a white box and placed it in my hand. I thought of you. I thought you would like a bit of home after your long trip, he said. Look inside and see what it is. I lifted the cover, and what was my surprise to see real Japanese food, fresh and delicious. I must, long before, have heard my brother say that Japanese food could be obtained in America, but it made no impression upon me, and I was as astonished as if I had experienced never again to behold Japanese food. I looked up gratefully, and when I saw the humorous twinkle in his eye and kindliness in every feature of his smiling face, the strangeness of my surroundings melted away, and there came my first throb of homesickness. For behind the gentle smile, I saw the heart of my father. Years before, just after my father's death, Ishi had taken me to the temple of the 500 Buddhas, where stood row after row of big carved image of stone or gilded wood. Every face was gentle, calm, and peaceful, and my lonely little heart searched each one, hoping to find my father's, for he too was now a Buddha. I did not know then that a longing heart will recognize its own reflection in only a trifle. And when I saw a face, gentle, dignified, and with a kindly smile, I felt that it pictured my father's heart, and I was satisfied. Just so I saw my father in the face of the old man whose kind heart had prompted the homely gift. I loved to remember that smile as my welcome to the strange new country, whichever after was to be linked in my heart so closely to my own. During their long ride across the continent, I was reminded constantly of the revolving lanterns, which were so fascinating to me as a child. The rapidly changing views from the train were like the gay scenes on the lantern panels that flitted by too quickly to permit of a clear image, their very vagueness being the secret of their charm. Mr. and Mrs. Holmes came as far as large city near my future home, where they placed me in the charge of a lady school teacher, a friend of Mrs. Holmes. Then they said goodbye and slipped out of my life, probably forever, but they left a memory of kindness and consideration which will remain with me always. When I was whirled into the dusky station of the city of my destination, I peered rather curiously from the car window. I was not anxious. I had always been taken care of, and it did not take trouble that I was to meet one I had never known before. On the crowded platform, I saw a young Japanese man, erect, alert, watching eagerly each person who stepped from the train. It was Matsuo. He wore a gray suit and a straw hat, and to me looked modern, progressive, foreign in everything except his face. Of course, he knew who I was at once, but to my astonishment, his first words were, "Why did you wear Japanese dress?" There flashed into my mind a picture of the grave faces of the family council and my grandmother's words regarding pipe sleeves. Yet here was I in a land of pipe sleeves, gazing upon my future husband, a pipe-sleeved man. I thought about it now, but then I was only a lonely, loose-sleeved, reproved little girl. Matsuo's disappointment in my dress was mostly on account of a much-honored friend, Mrs. Wilson, the kind lady about whom Matsuo had written a letter which for years was kept in Mother's shrine. With thoughtful kindness, She has sent Matsuo in her carriage to meet me, and he, anxious that I should appear well in her eyes, was disgusted not to find me very up to date and progressive. I silently took my place beside Matsuo in the shining carriage, with its prancing black horses and uniformed coachmen. And in absolute silence, we rolled away the busy streets and up the long, sloping hill to a beautiful suburban home. I did not realize that the situation was perhaps as trying to him as to me, for I had never been so close to a man in my life, except my father, and I almost died on that trip. The carriage turned into a road that circled the spacious lawn and stopped before a large gray house, with the wide, many-columned porch. Outside the door stood a stately lady and a tall, white-haired gentleman. The lady greeted me with an outstretched hand and a cordial words of welcome. I was too grateful to reply, and when I looked up into the noble, kindly face of the white-haired gentleman beside her, peace crept into my heart. For, behind his gentle smile, again I saw the heart of my father. Those two good people will never know until they stand within the shining gates where heavenly knowledge clears our eyes how much their kindness, both before and after our wedding, meant to Matsuo and to me. For 10 restful days, I was made welcome to the beautiful home. Then came the second of the 3 inevitables, for in old Japan, marriage held its place equally with birth and death. My wedding took place on a beautiful day in June. The sun shone, the soft wind murmured through the branches of the grand old trees on the lawn. The reception room, with its treasures of art gathered from all lands, with fragrant with blossoms, and before a wonderful inlaid console table were 2 crossed flags, American and Japanese. There Matsuo and Etsu stood while the Christian words were spoken, which made them one. By Matsuo's side was his business partner, a good, kind man, and beside me stood one who, ever since, has proved my best and truest friend. So we were married. Everyone said it was a beautiful wedding. To me, the room was filled with the blur of strange things and people, all throbbing with the spirit of great kindness, and vaguely, mistily, I realized that there had been fulfilled a sacred vow that the gods had made long before I was born. Our friend, Mrs. Wilson, was always kind to me, and I had been a happy and grateful guest in her beautiful home many, many times. But my permanent home was in an adjoining suburb, in a large, old-fashioned framed house set on a hill in the midst of big trees and long huts with winding gravel paths. The mistress of the house was a widow relative of Mrs. Wilson, a woman in whom was united the stern, high-principled stock of New England with the gentle Virginia aristocracy. She invited us for a visit at first, because she loved Japan. But we were all so happy together that we decided not to separate. So for many years, our home was there with Mother, and we learned to call her. Close to my own mother in my heart of hearts stands by American Mother, one of the noblest, sweetest women that God ever made. From the love and sympathy and wisdom of this pleasant home, I looked forth upon America at its best, and learned to gather with understanding and appreciation the knowledge that had been denied my poor brother and his narrow life in the same land. End of chapter 16. Etsubo has made it to America. So I guess now we'll get to read more about her experiences here. Have you been to San Francisco, Palm Star? One day. Oh. One day. I guess she would settle in the West Coast. Give me money, ma'am. I'll give you money of entertainment. I need your gold money. My gold money. I don't have gold money. I wish I had gold money. But that was a good read. I'm going to miss all the talk of old Japan. But I guess now we'll learn more about her experiences in America. Boomers have a lot of gold. Not me. Remember, I don't have generational wealth. No, for real. I don't have generational wealth like that. What I can give is money and entertainment. Money in forms of entertainment. Ooh, I'm going to stretch a little bit. That was a good read. Oh, my back. My back. Today is my upper back because I've been hunched over a computer all day. Oh no, you're back. It's just very, what do you call it? It's just very stiff. I need to loosen it up. This is a side effect of being elderly. That is true, but I'll get through it. Oh, I have a friend who let me have their you know those thingies that you put at the top of your door so you can do pull-ups? They gave me theirs because they're not using it anymore. So, yeah. Find out chiropractor. I have my older relatives for that. They know how to give good back massages. Oh yeah, do you like my sunglasses? it's it's in, I don't know what that is, but okay. My sunglasses? Oh, the thing you put at the top of your door frame? Like, you know, if you don't have like a bar to do like pull-ups, there's this little equipment thing that you can just hang it on there and then you can put pull-ups. But my sunglasses are so hip. I'm so cool. Mitch, a massage person. Yeah, I have older relatives who give really good back massages, so I'll just go ask them for a massage. I don't know that word. But yeah, my glasses. Orthopedic? Orthodontist? Orthodontist? Chiropractor? But yeah, my sunglasses are so cool. Oh, I don't remember what I said. Brain is going a mile a minute. Orthodontist? I ain't got money for an orthodontist. I have my relatives who do it for free. But it's the weekend. You got any weekend plans? I'm gonna go get some pho for dinner. It's been a while since I had some good pho. Too many complicated words out there. I agree. Why are there So many words that mean the same thing. Ooh, okay, okay. I hope you have a good night at work. Oh, did you see my poll on Twitter about which game to in the poll to play first? I need a lot of money to quit my job. I hear you there. I hear you there. I need a job to support my VTubing activities. I'll find it under your mattress. What, my poll? Oh, my money? Who says it's under my mattress? Huh? Maybe I buried it in a yard somewhere. Bro, your money. Yeah, maybe I buried it in a yard somewhere. Ever thought of that? Yeah, you're never gonna find it. I buried it somewhere. Why would I put it under my mattress? That's like the first thing people would check. Who says it's in a metal container? Hmm. Gotta be smart. And the only map is in my brain. I'll dig your backyard and find that plastic bag of who says it's my backyard? And who said it's a plastic bag? Maybe all you'll find is like a bunch of pennies. A box. Who said it's a box? Maybe it's a burlap sack. Ever thought of that? Maybe it's a burlap sack. And who says it's my backyard? Maybe it's an open field somewhere in the woods at a beach. I'll find it, trust me. Let me know when you do. I probably forget where I buried it. Let me know if you find it. It'll help me out greatly. Boomers don't like the forest. That's why I put it there. So no boomers can get it. Beach is too easy. I don't know about that. It'll be disguised by all of the metals and abandoned items from other people there. My guess, you'll give it to Seeker. She don't know anything about that either. Never. She'll never betray me. She'll never betray me. She's not your bestie until you can get her to like cracks, bro. That's why me and Seeker are good friends. We don't like Crocs. Besties over elderly. You know nothing. You know nothing. But alright. I'm gonna go get some pho. And I hope you have a good night's work. A good night work. I hope you'll eat enough to be strong. Pho? 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 Noodle? Vietnamese noodle broth? Don't tell me you pronounce it like pho. You said nah. I said pho. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Pho. I don't Vietnamese. I don't know Vietnamese. I don't speak Vietnamese either. I just know pho. Bye po, okay. Mình nhỏ lại. Mình nhỏ lại. Alright. Have a good night's work. And I'm gonna get some pho. I hope you have a good weekend too. Bye bye.